By 2026, walking into a grocery store feels like stepping onto a battlefield. Prices glare from every shelf. Receipts shock even the most prepared shoppers. Headlines whisper that inflation is only 2.4%, a number meant to soothe, but the reality is harsher, sharper, invisible to those who report it. Kai Draven, an investigative analyst with a reputation for peeling back the veil on global crises, steps into the frame. He doesn't just see numbers, he sees a hidden war unfolding beneath everyday life, a battle that stretches far beyond American borders. Each dollar spent, each rising grocery total, becomes a marker in an invisible conflict, quietly shaping U.S. power and influence while the world watches, mostly unaware. Even as news anchors insist the economy is stable, Kai's eyes track the subtle tremors, sanctions reshaping trade, oil pipelines humming with tension, and Middle East dynamics rippling across oceans. The calm is an illusion, and beneath it, the real war is just beginning. Inflation is not a force that announces itself with sirens or tanks. It moves silently like a ghost army, infiltrating every corner of daily life. Supply chains creak under the weight of global crises, tariffs slice through margins, and political tension amplifies every disruption. Eggs, once a humble staple at $2 a dozen, soar to $623, a staggering emblem of systemic fragility. It's a number that shocks the senses and signals a broader truth: the economy, much like a battlefield, can collapse from a single weak point. Kai highlights the hidden levers at play: Iran's energy exports subtly dictating the price of fuel, Chinese tariffs pressing up the cost of imported goods, Middle Eastern tensions rippling into commodities and shipping routes. Every supply chain tremor, every delayed shipment, becomes an unseen strike against American stability. Each rising dollar is not just inflation, it is a battle scar, and the public walks through the ruins without realizing that America is under siege. Every dollar lost is a battlefield the public doesn't see, an invisible war where every household pays the price. The Vox family wakes each morning to a reality most Americans recognize but rarely see laid bare. Their small kitchen in suburban Atlanta holds the weight of years of rising cost. Groceries that once fit neatly into a weekly budget now bleed their bank account dry. Mortgage payments that should have been manageable stretch to the edge of reason, and credit card statements arrive like ticking time bombs. The family, Elias and Mara, both working full-time, and their teenage children Lilo and Owen, represent millions of ordinary Americans caught in the crossfire of an invisible economic war. Every meal, every bill, every unexpected expense becomes a decision between necessity and survival. Housing, once a symbol of stability, has turned into a trap. The Vox family's home, purchased in 2020 at what seemed a fair price, now sits in a market where new listings are nearly impossible to afford for families like theirs. For low and middle-income households across the country, the dream of moving, upgrading, or even refinancing is frozen. The rules of the game have shifted without notice, leaving families stranded in financial positions that feel both permanent and perilous. Even small missteps, an overdue bill, a sudden repair, ripple outward, compounding the pressure and stress. The human toll is invisible to the headlines that insist inflation is under control. Children's futures, family stability, and mental well-being are quietly eroded while analysts debate percentages on television. The Vox family's struggle is emblematic of a broader crisis. Millions of Americans are fighting battles at their kitchen tables and bedroom desks that the public, and often policymakers, cannot see. While the media reports mild numbers, millions are already losing the fight in their own homes. By mid-2026, the invisible war on American households had entered a new phase. It was no longer just rising groceries or impossible mortgage payments. It was the strategic escalation of economic levers, wielded like weapons in a global chess game. The red line tariffs, quietly implemented and sparsely reported, acted as a hidden pressure valve, raising costs on imported goods and delaying any sense of relief for families already teetering on the edge. What appeared to the public as routine trade policy was, in reality, a subtle destabilization, a slow-motion siege on the everyday American economy. Analysts like Eliora Vex and Fen Corwin began sounding the alarm, peeling back the veneer of official statistics to reveal the cracks in the system. Supply chains groaned under new costs, households carried unprecedented debt, and the effects of tariffs rippled through both imported and domestic goods. These economists traced the pressure lines back to global forces: Iranian energy exports fluctuating with geopolitical tension, instability across the Middle East pushing oil and commodity prices higher, and trade wars that amplified every domestic vulnerability. Each factor alone might have been manageable; combined, they formed an intricate web tightening around American families and markets alike. For those paying attention, it was clear this wasn't just a future threat. Our second wave of crisis was not coming. It was already moving under our feet. Prices, debt, and systemic strain were converging, quietly accelerating the collapse of financial stability before the country even recognized the battlefield. At the heart of America's invisible battlefield stood the Federal Reserve, the last line of defense against a tide few citizens could fully see. Chairman Riven, a figure often portrayed as calm and measured, orchestrated a series of interest rate maneuvers meant to slow inflation without collapsing the economy. Each decision carried the weight of millions of households, and each adjustment was a calculated strike in a war fought not with armies, but with percentages, projections, and market psychology. Yet uncertainty reigned. Even with months of data, the Fed's path forward resembled a Sears fog of war battlefield, where every move risked unintended consequences. Rate hikes threatened to stall growth and spike mortgage costs. Rate cuts could fan the flames of inflation already burning through household budgets. Analysts whispered warnings from the past, parallels to the 1970s, when premature easing sent prices skyrocketing, leaving the economy reeling for years. Every report, every statement, carried the weight of both action and inaction. The front line of policy was under attack, not by missiles or tanks, but by systemic pressures that ignored borders and politics, quietly tightening around the American people. And as the next meeting approached, as every economist watched and every citizen felt the pinch in their pocket, the question loomed. Even the architects of defense are unsure. Can the front line hold? Across the country, an invisible front was emerging, not in boardrooms or trading floors, but in the minds of everyday Americans. Surveys led by Dr. Juniper Valey painted a stark picture. Citizens weren't just noticing rising prices, they were expecting conditions to worsen. Anxiety had seeped into daily life, influencing decisions about what to buy, when to save, and whether to take on new debt. Fear itself had become a weapon, shaping behavior before policy could even react. People were connecting the dots in ways the headlines did not acknowledge. Tariffs on imported goods, volatile energy markets, and foreign policy tensions, all once distant and abstract, were now tangible in kitchen budgets and gas pumps. Iranian sanctions, Middle East unrest, and international maneuvering were no longer just geopolitical footnotes. They had a direct, subtle impact on domestic confidence, creating a ripple effect through spending habits, investment decisions, and household stability. Every delay in relief, every unexpected price spike, reinforced the sense that control was slipping. For the first time, it became clear that the battle was not only financial, it was psychological. The economy could be measured in percentages, but the public's perception of risk and scarcity was equally powerful. The battlefield is not just dollars, it's minds and expectations. And America's morale is cracking. The cracks in America's economy were no longer isolated. They were connecting, forming a network of vulnerability that threatened to topple entire sectors. Housing had become a trap. Median home prices soared beyond reach for millions. Mortgages consumed nearly half of household incomes, and homeowners found themselves frozen in place, unable to move without triggering financial catastrophe. At the same time, seekers' record credit card debt weighed heavily on families, while medical costs surged at rates unseen in decades. The financial pressures stacked like unstable blocks, each one amplifying the risk of collapse. Supply chains, too, revealed an unsettling fragility. Disruptions in one region, whether due to geopolitical tensions, shipping delays, or resource shortages, quickly cascaded across the country. Everyday goods became leverage points, vulnerabilities that foreign powers, intentionally or indirectly, could exploit. Red-line tariffs, quietly layered onto imports and domestic substitutes, added fuel to the fire, inflating costs for new construction, household goods, and essential services. The pattern was clear: one sector faltering could send shockwaves through the rest, triggering a domino effect that no single policy or intervention could fully contain. The invisible war was no longer abstract. It was systemic, a multi-layered crisis poised to erupt. Every sector is a domino. One shock and the system could collapse in a single wave. Beneath the surface of rising prices and shrinking wallets, AA's global chessboard was quietly reshaping the battlefield. Iran, long studied for its regional influence, had perfected the art of subtle leverage. Its control over energy exports, combined with strategic responses to sanctions, allowed Tehran to reshape markets without firing a single shot, nudging oil and commodity prices in ways that amplified domestic pressures in the United States. Every barrel of oil, every energy contract, became a silent instrument of influence, a way to steer outcomes thousands of miles away. The broader Middle East added layers to this unseen pressure. Regional instability, from shipping disruptions to local conflicts, rippled outward, affecting supply chains, commodity flows, and insurance rates for global shipping. Every spike in cost, every delay, reached American consumers in grocery aisles and gas stations. Tangible proof that the world was quietly conspiring against domestic stability. While policymakers wrestled with tariffs, interest rates, and household debt, foreign actors adjusted the battlefield from afar, unseen and unaccountable. The nation was fighting a war on its own soil, yet the architects of that conflict remained invisible, their strategies hidden in pipelines, shipping lanes, and sanctions paperwork. America fights a war on its own soil while unseen powers adjust the battlefield from afar. Kai Draven stands at the edge of a quiet street in 2026, watching families like the Voxes navigate the invisible battlefield of their daily lives. Headlines shout that inflation is just 2.4%, but that number is a VAR's misleading front, a veneer that conceals 6 years of accumulated erosion, rising debt, and systemic fragility. Every mortgage payment, every grocery run, every unpaid medical bill tells a story that the statistics fail to capture: a nation under strain, fighting a crisis it cannot see. The lesson is clear. Numbers alone cannot convey lived reality. The hidden pressures, from red-line tariffs to supply chain shocks, from rising energy costs influenced by Iran to Middle East instability, shape households and markets long before they appear in official reports. Kai emphasizes that awareness is a form of defense. Understanding the invisible battlefield is as important as any government policy or economic intervention. Citizens who grasp the connections, anticipate the shocks, and prepare for hidden stressors stand a chance to navigate what others cannot. He leaves viewers with a sober, urgent reminder: the crisis is far from over. The second wave of inflation, global leverage, and systemic debt is already moving beneath the surfaces. Those who can perceive the invisible battlefield, the unseen currents shaping daily life, will be the ones best positioned to survive and endure. In this war without bullets, knowledge and vigilance are the ultimate weapons.